Let's rewind to 2025, a year when Stephen Colbert's Late Show ruled the late-night airwaves. Ratings? He was miles ahead of Fallon and Kimmel, with a cultural reach stretching from Emmy nominations to viral TikTok moments. But what if I told you that dominance can become a double-edged sword? Colbert's satirical "Why This" signature move was also his Achilles heel. Now, you might be thinking, how can success sow the seeds of failure? Well, that's what we're here to unpack. Two key terms to know: market share. Colbert had the most viewers, and brand equity. His comedic voice shaped the show's public identity. But in television, the higher you climb, the thinner the air. So, let's begin our descent into what made this dominance so precarious. Imagine being at the top of your field, but feeling the ground shifting under your feet. That's where Colbert stood as 2025 unfolded. Why does being one sometimes make you the perfect target? Let's dig into the events that set the stage for his unraveling. Stick with me as we track the first cracks in the foundation of late night's reigning king. July 1, 2025, Paramount Global, CBS's parent company, settles a lawsuit with Donald Trump for $16 million. On paper, this was about a disputed 60-minute segment. But beneath the legalese, it was a major strategic play, what corporate lawyers call reputational risk management. But why did this settlement matter so much to Colbert? Because it cast a shadow over CBS's independence. Now, let me ask, would you trust your employer if they wrote a big check to silence a political figure? Here's the tension. Paramount needed regulatory approvals for a huge merger, what's called regulatory capture. By paying off a political adversary, they hoped to smooth the path. But to Colbert, it looked like corporate surrender. When a network bends, does it break the trust of its talent and its audience? That's the first domino. And Colbert, never one to hold back, soon made his feelings known. Fast forward to July 14, Colbert's back from hiatus, and he doesn't mince words. On national TV, he calls the Trump settlement a big fat bribe. That's not just comedy, it's what crisis managers call a public breach of alignment. Now, imagine you're a CBS executive watching your star host torch your legal strategy in front of millions. That's what we call a PR nightmare. But Colbert's move wasn't just rebellion, was emotional authenticity. He saw his network bowing to political pressure and responded with biting satire. Here's a question: was it bravery or recklessness? Let me tell you a story. Years ago, Colbert built his career by skewering power. But this time, the target was inside his own house. If you wonder why networks fear loose cannons, this is Exhibit A. Just 3 days later, July 17, CBS announces The Late Show will end in May 2026. No replacement, no succession, plan just a clean break. In corporate speak, that's franchise termination. Why such a drastic move? The answer lies in what insiders call pretextual justification. Colbert's on-air comments gave CBS the reason it needed to pull the plug, especially with financial pressures mounting. Now, you might ask, was this about money, politics, or both? The truth is, it was the perfect storm: falling ad revenue, political risk, and a host unwilling to play by the rules. CBS chose to protect its corporate interests over its stars' convictions. Was it inevitable or avoidable? Let's look at how the fallout rippled through both the media and the public. The cancellation triggered a media frenzy. Think narrative warfare. Commentators debated whether Colbert was a martyr for free speech or a casualty of corporate discipline. Here, two terms matter: editorial independence and brand safety. Some said CBS proved that big media can't tolerate dissent. Others argued Colbert broke a cardinal rule: don't embarrass your boss when the stakes are high. Now you might be thinking, shouldn't satire be protected even if it bites the hand that feeds? But networks see things differently, especially during billion-dollar mergers. For the audience, it was more than entertainment. It was a question of trust. Who gets to set the boundaries of comedy and criticism? That's the heart of this media firestorm. Where does principled satire end and professional obligation begin? Let's break down Colbert's position with a SWOT: analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, but with a twist: self-sabotage. His strengths, like ratings, dominance, and viral relevance, became weapons he turned on his own network. He could have leveraged influence for negotiation, but chose confrontation instead. Weaknesses? Over-reliance on political satire, think content tunnel vision, and a rigid show format made him an easy target for execs seeking change. Opportunities existed: digital expansion, streaming pivots, alliances with CBS leadership. But Colbert doubled down on antagonism, burning bridges rather than building them. Threats, like political retaliation and declining ad revenue, were amplified by his timing. When you provoke during a merger, you offer your employer a financial alibi to act. So, was Colbert the architect of his own downfall? In many ways, Yesan the SWOT makes it plain. What happens when a star's brand and a network's priorities drift apart? That's called strategic misalignment. Colbert's public persona moral satirist, truth-teller grew incompatible with CBS's need for stability during a corporate merger. Let's unpack two terms: public alignment, how talent and network present a united front, and operational risk, the cost of unpredictable behavior. When Colbert mocked the settlement, he crossed both lines. Now, imagine you're a CBS lawyer. Do you back your star or protect the merger? That's the conflict at the heart of this misalignment. Colbert's refusal to diversify content or tone down political jabs meant his show couldn't adapt to shifting expectations. In the end, strategic misalignment left both sides exposed, and neither blinked until it was too late. But strategy isn't the whole story. Colbert's downfall was also about emotional overreach. He let personal conviction override professional restraint, a classic case of what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. His on-air tirades blurred satire with real frustration. Emotional monologues became public catharsis, great TV, but risky business. Now you might wonder, isn't authenticity what audiences crave? Absolutely. But for corporate partners, emotional unpredictability is a liability. Colbert's loyalty shifted from CBS to his viewers. He chose to go down swinging rather than negotiate survival. Would you do the same if your values clashed with your paycheck? This episode wasn't just about misplayed strategy, it was about the cost of emotional integrity in a corporate world. Let's dive deeper. Colbert's actions were shaped by what psychologists call a hero complex. Decades of personal tragedy and a public identity as a moral satirist fueled his need to speak truth, even when it meant self-sacrifice. He saw himself not just as a comedian, but as a crusader. That's narrative self-concept, the story we tell ourselves about our purpose. Catharsis over strategy became his default. The July 14 monologue was less about jokes, more a public indictment. It resonated with fans, but alienated CBS execs. If you've ever felt torn between doing what's right and keeping your job, you know this tension. Colbert chose legacy over longevity, a risky bet in network television. His emotional allegiance was always to his audience first. That's what made him beloved and ultimately expendable. So what's the lesson from Colbert's downfall? It's the collision of emotional authenticity and corporate pragmatism. He became both hero and architect of his own demise. Corporate America rewards loyalty and predictability, what risk managers call institutional alignment. Colbert chose to violate the unspoken contract. Don't bite the hand that syndicates you. Now, you might ask, was it worth it? For Colbert, honoring his values meant accepting the consequences. For CBS, it meant sacrificing a star to save the brand. Let me leave you with this. In media, as in life, emotional integrity and career survival rarely coexist. Would you rather be remembered for truth or tenure? That's the anatomy of self-sabotage, a cautionary tale for anyone who dares to put conviction ahead of compromise.